cliche of the day, c'est la vie, that's just life. It ain't easy, it's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
Put a smile on your face, make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
Put a smile on your face, make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
What you give in this life that we live, and all that you do will come back to you. Life, it ain't easy, it's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
Put a smile on your face, make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
Put a smile on your face, make the world a better place.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do. Yo, when things isn't right, there's no need to fight. From you have life, then everything nice. Love all your elders, please be polite. Even when you're hurting, don't forget to smile. Give love to all nation, big or small. When you do good, you'll get your reward. United we stand, divided we fall. Put a smile on your face and greet one and all.
Life, it ain't easy. Oh, it's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
Put a smile on your face, make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do.
Put a smile on your face.
Come on, smile.
Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do, say what you gonna do. People love you when you smile, and hate you when you screw. Lots of happiness, Rasta know we are wishing you. You could have come from Jamaica or Honolulu. Hey, keep a smile on your face and see the good that you do. What me say you for do? Smile, and everything will be fine. You don't know all the vibe, kicking me inside. Love it when you smile, you look beautiful like that. Again from top. Your dimples are so cute. A lot of happiness in smile.
Our afternoon panel is titled Achieving Harmony and Balance, which is another way of asking, how do we put all of this together? So to help answer that question, we're going to hear from three dynamic women this afternoon: a poet, a journalist, and a publisher. And to get things started, our first panelist is a member of Princeton University's first graduating class of women, an award-winning journalist, and the author of a new book, Asian American Dreams: The Emergence of an American People. She is a contributing editor and former executive editor at Ms. Magazine, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle, and many other publications. Last year, A magazine honored her as one of the most influential Asian Americans of the decade. She is a longtime activist for social justice on issues ranging from civil rights and peace to women's rights and hate crimes. Her work on a landmark civil rights case involving anti-Asian violence was documented in the Academy Award-nominated film Who Killed Vincent Chin? It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Helen Zia. Helen Zia. Please give her a warm welcome.
Good afternoon. Can I tell you how beautiful you all look from this side of the podium? I'm just so thrilled to be here with you today and to be part of such an amazing group of women, with so many of my personal sheroes here in this room today. That's right. As a writer and a former editor for Ms. Magazine, I've spent much of my life taking on issues related to women and girls, and I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to Mayor Brown's Summit on Women. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Chairwoman Ito, and all of the people who made this summit possible. I too must confess that I have felt the F word, fear. It's been a part of my life these past few weeks as well, but I'm relieved to find from the other speakers today that I've been in very good company. This panel today is about balance and harmony, and what I want to talk about really has nothing to do with the Zen-like balance that is so often associated with Asian women. What I want to share with you is about visibility. It's about bringing the different parts of all of us here today into focus. For me, having it all means a place where all of us are visible, where people who are unseen and unheard have voice, visibility, and power. This is a point that I know very well because there was a time when I was invisible. There was a time when I wasn't seen and I wasn't heard. There was a time when I didn't see myself anywhere or see anyone who looked like me. At that time, I could never have imagined even speaking up, let alone speaking before a room so full like this. At that time, in fact, I was invisible. You know what I mean about being invisible? Sure you do. I know you do. You know, because being invisible is all too common for us as women and girls. And yet look at us here, all in this room today. How can so many incredible women in one place be invisible? For me, as an Asian American girl, born and raised in New Jersey, as the daughter of immigrants from China, I never saw myself in the world around me. I was nowhere. I was invisible. Or if I ever came into the picture, I was the alien invader from Mars who didn't belong in the United States of America. Whenever my family walked into a shop, a diner, or a store, heads would turn and people would look at us as though to ask, what are those people doing in my America? Sometimes they'd ask me the question that almost every Asian American person has been asked thousands of times. Where are you from? And I would always answer, New Jersey. And then they'd go on and say, no, but where are you really from? And I'd say, well, I'm from New Jersey, really? But finally they'd say, no, where are your people from? And I'd say, oh, well, my parents are from China. But when I turned the question around and then asked them, well, where are your people from? They'd often reply in a huff and just say, my people are from America, as though mine couldn't possibly be. The worst part was that even when I wanted to be in the picture, when I wanted to add my voice to the issues of the day, there wasn't any place for me. For example, there was my high school friends back in the 1960s, Rose and Julie. Rose was black and Julie was white. One day we stood in the schoolyard talking about the civil rights movement that was swirling around us, about cities engulfed in flames and anguish and dreams for justice and equality and the dreams that burned in each of us. As I offered my thoughts, Rose turned to me and said, "Helen, you've got to decide whether you're black or white." Now, stunned, I couldn't find the words to say that I was neither, that I had an identity all of my own. Back then, I didn't know the words Asian American. My parents did their best to raise my 5 siblings and me by scraping together a living. My mom and my brothers and I, we made trinkets in our house that my father would pack up in the car every day and sell to flower shops. That's how they raised us and survived. My parents were my teachers and my role models. They taught me to be proud of my heritage. But they really didn't know how to tell us about being Asian in America, about being Asian American. They were immigrants trying to survive. And what they did teach us was often steeped in traditional Chinese values. They taught us to respect our elders, to cherish our families, and as children, to be obedient, to be seen and not heard. As a girl, I knew what it meant to follow the 3 obediences of Confucius. The girl obeys her father, the wife obeys her husband, and the widow obeys her sons. Even as a kid, I knew this was not something I wanted to do, to live in the shadows of somebody else for the rest of my life. Still, it was hard not to absorb what they were teaching me. And I was the quiet and obedient Asian American kid who was seen and not heard. For example, there was Mrs. George. Beginning in the 2nd grade until I graduated from high school, Mrs. George was my phys ed teacher. Mrs. George was the aunt of Carl Lewis, the gold medal Olympic track star, and she was always very kind to me. But from the first moment that she taught me when I was 7 years old until I graduated from high school when I was 17, Mrs. George called me Zai, as though it rhymed with I. One day when I was in the 12th grade, she yelled over at me something like, "Zai, come on over here." And a nearby classmate said to her, "Mrs. George, you know, Helen's name is Zia, it's not Zai." Mrs. George looked at me and let out a huge laugh. She said, Zia, how come you never told me how to say your name after all these years?" I didn't know how to answer her. It never occurred to me once in those 10 years to correct my teacher on the proper pronunciation of my name. Teachers in the Chinese Confucian world were right up there with parents, commanding respect and obedience. And the truth was, I simply had no voice to raise to my teacher. But the day finally came when I had to disobey my father. I had received a full scholarship to attend college, which I worked hard to get because I knew this was the only way I was going to get out of this life of making trinkets for flower shops. My father was proud of me, but when it came time for him to sign my college papers to let me go to college, he refused. He said, "The proper place for an unmarried Chinese girl is to stay at home with her parents." When he told me this, I could see the doors of my future slamming shut. Even at age 18, I had never knowingly disobeyed my father. Somehow, I mustered up the courage to shout, "No, I'm going to college." I don't know who was more surprised by my outburst, my father or me. But he said nothing more about the subject, and off I went to college. In that act of disobedience, I learned one of my most important lessons in life, that if I wanted to be heard, I would have to make myself be heard. If I wanted to be seen, I would have to make myself be seen. And in that first conscious act of standing up to my father, I learned that I could change our relationship. I could change the world around me. And in doing so, I too was transformed. I too was changed. Now, after that act of speaking up to my father, I discovered that I kind of liked this speaking up, this raising my voice, this making myself visible. At the time that I went off to college, I was very lucky to find the civil rights movement for third world liberation, the anti-war protests, the women's movement. It was very exciting. But the strangest thing happened when I tried to raise my voice, my newfound voice. I learned that sometimes people really didn't want to hear what I had to say. Well, I threw myself into becoming a volunteer in the organizing for third world liberation. That was the name we gave ourselves, our motley crew of Black, Native American, Hispanic, and Asian American community activists. We saw that our destinies as people of color were intertwined and that our struggle was the same. We were sisters and brothers in a movement for a better world, and it was glorious. Yet when I talked about fighting for equality as a woman, I was told by my third world brothers, we have to fight racism first. Sexism will come later. My third world brothers didn't want to hear about violence against women, about the need for child care, equal pay for equal work, or about the inequities at home. In fact, my third world brothers sounded just like the Chinese three obediences. Men first, women later. Well, and then there was the issue of sexual orientation. As a young person, I slowly began to realize that I was a lesbian. I spent my days organizing and hanging out with my third world brothers. But as I began to explore this side of myself, I sought out lesbian activists. One day I was invited to a special meeting by my fellow Asian American and African American community activists. When I got to the meeting, I was seated at one side of the room, and my friends were seated in a semicircle around me. It slowly dawned on me that I was the topic of the meeting. Tariq, who was a soft-spoken African-American man who led a collective of Black activists, started the discussion. Helen, he said, we've noticed you're spending a lot of time with lesbians. Yeah? Okay. And then he went on, we need to know if you're a lesbian, because if you were, it would harm our organizing efforts. We would have to break off ties with you and also the other Asian Americans. Now, it seemed wrong to me that who I was would reflect badly on other Asian Americans, but there my Asian American friends were nodding their heads in agreement. The leader of our Asian American group hastened to reassure Tariq. Homosexuality is not part of our community, he said. It's a symptom of white, middle-class self-indulgence. We could not have a lesbian working with us. Well, the meeting became more like a trial as they amassed the charges and the evidence. Together they asked, how would I plead? So tell us, Helen, are you a lesbian? Now, I couldn't believe my ears. These friends, my extended family, were asking me to choose between my Asian American self and another intrinsic part of me. Feeling their stares as they awaited my response, I felt unsure. I hadn't acted on my impulses. Was I really a lesbian? I didn't know the answer, but I was certain of one thing. My Chinese upbringing had taught me to value my family above all. Suddenly, my extended family, my community, was threatening to disown me. Was I a lesbian? I answered, no, I'm not. With that answer, the meeting was over, And everybody went on to business as usual, except for me. I had stepped into the closet and slammed the door shut. I discovered that I was supposed to keep a part of my voice silent, to keep a part of me invisible. And I became a part of that conspiracy of silence. So when some of my friends who lived in Detroit, Michigan, suggested that I move there, I jumped at the chance. I packed up my little Chevy Vega and drove out to the Motor City. And I got a job almost immediately as a large press operator at a Chrysler stamping plant. For years, I stamped out car hoods and doors and fenders and any number of the thousands of parts that go into a car. I worked alongside women and men from all walks of life, and I reaffirmed what I had always believed, that we have so much more in common with each other than we can ever imagine. In that decrepit and run-down Chrysler factory, I got the best education about people that I could ever have received. When I was laid off with all of those other auto workers during the collapse of the American auto industry, I also got an education in human endurance and will and spirit. As we stood together in long lines at the unemployment office and at the union halls, at the soup kitchens, and at the welfare offices. There in Detroit, I learned to find my voice again, to become a journalist and a writer, because I saw that the voices and the faces and the stories of my friends and coworkers and neighbors were simply not being told. While I was in Detroit, I also became part of a new civil rights movement that would be led by Asian Americans. In 1982, a young Chinese American man named Vincent Chin was beaten to death by two white auto workers who blamed Japan for the failure of the U.S. auto industry, and they also blamed anyone who looked Japanese. The city of Detroit, with its tiny Asian American population, became ground zero for a new civil rights movement involving Asian Americans. It was the first time in our American history that Asian Americans in all of our diverse ethnic communities would come together from all over the country, including from here in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, to fight for our civil rights. I was very proud to be a part of that effort to help these communities find a voice and to be part of building bridges with other communities, communities of Black, Latino, whites, of women, of Christians and Jews, and all communities that care about justice and equality. I also found how working to help others find their voice would help me regain my own voice. What I learned from working on these and other issues was how much our destinies and our worlds are so intertwined. None of our communities exists as an island, separate from one another. Yet today, somehow, we are so often pitted against each other, as though each race is here and here and here, and women are over there, and gays and lesbians are over there. We're split and divided into so many parts. And why? So often for the purposes of keeping us divided. For example, I'm struck time and again by how people see people who look like me as the eternal foreigner, always the foreigner who has nothing to do with real America, with real American history, when in fact the history of Asians in America is so closely tied to the deepest parts of American society. Why did Asian people first start coming to America in any numbers? Because of slavery, or more accurately, because of the abolition of slavery. In 1806, England outlawed the slave trade, at least on paper. And in that very same year, the slave traders took their boats and rerouted them from Africa and sent them over to Asia to bring over Asian coolies from China and Japan and India. How much more linked can we be to our nation's history and our psyche? Yet this critical insight is MIH, missing in history. We know, for example, that prominent African Americans spoke up against the exclusion of Chinese and other Asians from California. And we know that some black leaders argued that the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II was wrong. Our national poet, Maya Angelou, wrote about seeing her Japanese American neighbors and friends disappear overnight from the Western Addition as they were sent off to American concentration camps. At the same time, it was Japanese American GIs who liberated Jewish Holocaust survivors from the Nazi death camp Dachau. Yet this information is MIH. It's missing in history. Asian Americans were active participants in the civil rights movement. There's the famous photo of the Reverend Martin Luther King during one of the freedom marches in the 1960s, where he's wearing a flower lei. It was brought to him by marchers from Hawaii. And the person who cradled Malcolm X as he lay dying was the renowned Japanese-American activist Yuri Kochiyama, a longtime Harlem resident and friend of the African-American leader. San Francisco's poet laureate, Janice Mirikitani, writes so much about the many social justice arenas that she and other Asian Americans have been part of. Yet this knowledge is MIH. It's missing in history. Here in California, Mexican and Filipino farm workers toiled side by side in the fields, and together they initiated the Great Grape Strike led by Cesar Chavez. In the 1800s, many Chinese fought for their civil rights against the city of San Francisco and the state of California during the exclusion period, and they took their lawsuits all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Some of their lawsuits became the foundation and a part of the modern-day civil rights movement of the 1960s. In Los Angeles in 1992, 50,000 Korean Americans marched in protest against police brutality toward African American motorist Rodney King. While in 1996, with Proposition 209, some 70 to 80% of the Asian Americans who were polled in a massive polling project were found that they voted to support affirmative action, 70 to 80% of Asian Americans. Yet these stories from all of our communities, you can see that they're truly inseparable, that we are so linked together. Yet this knowledge is MIH, missing in history. It's unacceptable that so many stories critical to our communities are missing in history. Why do we accept this false sense that we are so separate from one another? When in fact, if we only listen to each other's stories, we can see how very much we have in common, how much we have to give and share with each other. And that's the beauty of the Mayor's Summit on Women today, because it brings us all together to share our stories, to bridge our histories and our lives. It has become my life's work to bring voice and visibility to the people and stories that remain so hidden from view. I try to reclaim some of these MIH stories in my book, Asian American Dreams, because I know so well what it means to be invisible myself. I know not only the pain of living in the shadows, but I also know how much the entire community loses when any one of us is forced to be silent. I began this presentation with my personal quest to bring all parts of myself into visibility, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that, yes, I did find a way to throw open the closet door in my own life. I eventually came out as a lesbian. My life became full and happy, but it took on that strange separation that many gay people experience. I was an Asian American, and I was a lesbian, but in those days I couldn't be both in the same space. It was easy to maintain a facade in a world that sees all Asian Americans and people of color to be heterosexual, and all gays to be white and generally male. Which, of course, isn't true at all. But when I came out to my family, they were loving and supportive, glad that I had found happiness in a home life of my own with my life partner, Leah. Mom talked about gays in old Shanghai, and she encouraged me to raise a family anyway. My 80-year-old auntie, Auntie Betty, is still trying to match me with Mr. Right. So what if you're gay, she says to me. You can still find a man. But the remaining challenge for me was to figure out a way to come out to an Asian American community whose kinship meant so much to me, yet when the memories of my lesbian trial were still so fresh. An opportunity arose when I was to deliver a speech on Asian Americans and the media at a convention in New York in 1992. It was a time when there were a lot of anti-gay initiatives on various ballots, and many of them tried to pit people of color against gays and lesbians. And I wanted to show that Asian Americans also had a stake in the issue. But try as I might, I couldn't fit sexual orientation into that short speech. So I asked the MC, who was a friend of mine, if she could just add that little detail in her introduction. Fine, she said, no problem. And as she introduced me to this national gathering of journalists, and in front of the live C-SPAN cameras, she began. Helen Zia is a longtime journalist, a feminist, and, she hesitated, and she's a lesbian. Then she paused to adjust the microphone and asked, did you hear that? She's a lesbian. And you can see it all on C-SPAN. My fear of losing ties to the Asian American community never materialized. Rather, I discovered a new sense of freedom with my colleagues and my work, and because I was finally able to bring these various pieces of myself into the picture. And I tell you these stories today because I truly believe that the only way for us to come together as a nation and a people is to bring all parts of our society together, to bring all parts of ourselves into visibility. And that is a special power of this summit on women, the special gift that we have as women, because we understand what it means to actively listen. We know what can be achieved by sharing our stories, and we are empowered by transforming each other and ourselves in the telling of our stories. You know, it's been a very long road for me, from the time that I couldn't even tell my teacher how to say my name, to the point where I can stand before you today and tell you of these things. But I want to say to you what a native Hawaiian storyteller has said to me. We all make the road by walking it. We make the road by walking it. So let us all walk down that road together, hand in hand as sisters, across our differences. And when we do, we build bridges to the next millennium, and we may truly find balance and harmony. Thank you.
It's so nice, Helen, that you can get up and say that, because it lends a lot of us courage to do things we might not be able to do. So thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is the president of Turning Point Communications and the publisher of Turning Point Magazine. It's a publication aimed at California's African American community. Her name is Patricia Means. She is a highly successful entrepreneur, a manager, and a communications expert. She has worked in the media, in corporate America, and on behalf of new business startups. Every year, she produces the annual California African American Business Summit, the largest business-to-business conference in the entire state of California. From Southern California, please join me in welcoming Ms. Patricia Means.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. You know, Mayor Brown, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, to Carol Ito, to the sponsors, the organizing committee, and to Miss Linda Creighton. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. You know, Mayor Brown is the reason for two big developments in my personal and professional growth. I've had the opportunity to thank him privately for one of them, and now I want to thank him publicly. It was mentioned that we produced the annual California African American Business Summit. Well, that business summit, though not the largest in California, the largest African American business summit in the state of California, it got its start right here in San Francisco 2 years ago with the help and support and cheerleading and very concerted effort of Mayor Brown and his staff. So I thank you again, Mayor Brown. The second significant growth factor that he has contributed to is my being here today. You know, I'm not a speaker. I'm not on the circuit. In the course of running a business, of course I have to speak to audiences. So you practice. You start with a group of 10. You move to a group of 50. You speak before a group of 100. I think I'm up to about 500 until today. 5,000 people, 5,000 wonderful women. Thank you, Mayor Brown. And so with that, it's pretty good that I am nearsighted. Because the fact of the matter is, in order to read what I have on my paper, I have to take off my glasses, which means I can't see you out there. So it helps with that fear factor that I think every speaker today has talked about. Now, isn't that amazing? You know, as women, we can stand here and give a speech or talk to our audience and talk about being afraid. That is... We're honest. Can you imagine a man standing up here saying, "I'm so afraid"? I can't. Not any other man that I know. Anyway, I am very honored to have the opportunity to share my thoughts with you today. You know, this concept that we're talking about is an interesting one, to say the least. I prepared my response to this challenge a little more literally than you did, Helen. This achieving harmony and balance issue, I had to think about that. Having it all, wanting it all, is it all possible? I had conflicting answers. Because first of all, there's no such thing, at least among anybody that I know, as harmony and balance in life. Okay? But, on the other hand, I am a supreme optimist. I am an extremely optimistic person. I am one of the most hopeful and optimistic people you will ever meet in life. If you deliver a pile of manure to my front door, I'm going to take out my shovel and start digging. Because I figure with that much manure, it must be a pony in there somewhere. And so being so optimistic, when presented with this question, can you have it all? My first response is absolutely yes. After all, as I said, if anyone can believe in having it all, it's me. Now that's not because I have it all, but like I said, I am supremely optimistic. And there's a reason for my optimism. You know, I'm going to get a little serious now. When I look back at where I came from, to be standing on this stage today among truly powerful women and accomplished women with Mayor Brown, you'll understand why I'm optimistic. I was born and raised in Texas, Mayor, little town in East Texas. And for the first 12 years of my life, I lived in a house with no indoor plumbing. We had no running water. We didn't have any hot water heater. And my bathroom was about 300 yards out the back door. And when I was growing up, we didn't need a calendar to know when my mom's payday was coming or my grandmother's Social Security check was coming. We didn't need a calendar because the refrigerator told it very well. When it was close to time for my mom's paycheck or my grandmother's Social Security check, when those checks would come in, my grandmother would go to the grocery store and she would buy all kinds of food and she would stock the cabinets and she would stock the refrigerator, and I would open that refrigerator door and I would see all kinds of wonderful things in there. Probably was just staples because after all, we didn't have a lot of money, so she was not buying exotic foods. But it seemed so good and it was so comforting. But you know, the farther we got away from the day that the money was coming in, the emptier that refrigerator got. I can remember some days when my grandmother really had to be creative to make sure we three kids had something to eat. As a matter of fact, I have to give my grandmother credit for helping me develop a somewhat sophisticated palate. I'll give you a case in point. Polenta. I love polenta long before most Americans discovered it as a delicacy. You see, polenta is nothing more than fried cornmeal mush, in case you didn't know it. And I remember my grandmother, on those days when it was almost time for the next check to come in, I remember my grandmother making cornmeal mush for us for breakfast, because we didn't have any cream of wheat, and we didn't have any grits, and we didn't have any oatmeal. And then for dinner that day, she would take that cold cornmeal mush, and she would season it and slice it and fry it for dinner. Polenta. Of course, we didn't know it was polenta, we just thought it was dinner. But despite our lack of material things, our family had a lot of things going for us. We were taught pride. We learned to respect others, and we learned to respect ourselves. My grandmother instilled in each of us the expectation that our lives could be better than our present condition. Every day, even during those darkest times, my grandmother told us we were not poor, we were broke. You see, now I understand that being poor can be a permanent situation, but being broke is just temporary. So she let us know that you don't have to be broke all your life. I grew up understanding that the power to change my temporary situation of being broke was within myself, with a strong dependence on God. And so I grew up, and I became the first in my family to graduate from college. And I became the first in my family probably to set foot in the front door of a corporation, not less work there. I lived through the women's movement. And I must say that while I did not burn my bra, I certainly got comfortable with the notion of not wearing one. I learned the words, "I am woman, hear me roar." And when things got tough with a relationship, "I will survive" became my mantra. After my too-short marriage, and with the sole responsibility for raising my 2 children, I learned to juggle a career. I attended ballet classes and Little League baseball games, all the while writing my reports and climbing my way up that corporate ladder, along with juggling various relationships with several wonderful men. I was well on my way to having it all. Now, that achieving harmony and balance, that's a different subject. 18 years ago, I said goodbye to corporate America to enter that scary world of entrepreneurship. I gave up the retirement program, the staff, the lifestyle you learn to become accustomed to as a corporate executive. Not only for the opportunity to make my own decisions, but to type my own letters and empty the trash can and work 24/7. I decided to become an entrepreneur. And that was when I really started to understand the real meaning of what my grandmother told me. That's when I discovered that indeed you can have it all, but you have to define what your all is. I want to tell you something. The concept of having it all that we learn from our feminist sisters is a myth. Okay? I've never met anyone, and maybe my circle of acquaintances is too small, but I've never met anyone that has been able to effortlessly balance all aspects of their lives. We watch television. We see the women. They head a major corporation. They are the perfect mom. They bake cookies and put their kids to bed every night. And they carry on this amazing affair with their very handsome and adoring husbands. And they never have a run in their pantyhose. You know the story. That's a myth. That's TV. That is not the all that we should be striving for. The truth is we have to prioritize. We have to decide which all we want. For me, it's basically the following: a God-centered life, raising healthy, responsible children, a life that allows me to contribute to the betterment of my community, and a circle of good friends. Friends who care about me and about whom I care. And lastly, having a little fun. So you can have it all. You just have to define what your all is. And it's going to take a little work for you to achieve your alls. Everybody has to make a decision about what you want to be. You might not make a conscious decision, but I urge you to make a decision at this point. And you're going to have to work at achieving your all every day. So forget that fairy tale. Forget the TV version. Forget I am woman. Continue your version of having it all. And please, we talk about harmony and balance in our lives. Slow down. Stop running after everything and everybody, thinking you got to be in on everything. We can have it all truly when we breathe and smell the roses. When we decide what's important to us, then we'll truly have it all. And maybe someday we'll have some harmony and balance. Thank you.
Okay, so now we know that courage, a need to speak your mind, and a great sense of humor are critical to finding harmony and balance. That's just awesome. Thank you so much. Our final speaker for this afternoon session is the Poet Laureate of San Francisco and one of this nation's major poetic voices, Janice Mirikitani. She is known for her work as an editor and anthologist and has been instrumental in creating platforms for third world and women writers and artists. A third-generation Japanese American, she is a survivor of a World War II relocation camp, a lifelong activist for human and civil rights, and of course, the executive director of the programs at the wonderful Glide Memorial Church. Under Janice's leadership, Glide Memorial conducts extensive outreach to the poor and the homeless and offers comprehensive services for women, children, and youth. It is my honor to introduce to you the Poet Laureate of San Francisco, Janice Mirikitani.
Thank you very much, Cheryl Jennings. Good afternoon. I want to thank Mayor Brown, Carolito, the Summit Committee for inviting me to share this platform with such an incredible array of powerful women. I want to thank Helen Zia for her reclamation of our MIH, and thank Pat Means for your powerful message. And I want to thank Mayor Brown once more for naming me Poet Laureate, because it does give me license to read some poetry, if you don't mind. And I realize that I'm standing here between you and Bertice Berry, so I'm conscious of the time. A woman who has it all, has all of herself, all that has created the beloved fullness of her, goddess of gardening, artist of shopping, wizard of technology, empress of laundry, long-distance runner, magician with budgets, juggler of grocery carts, cooking, career, and children, her excellency of plumbing, diligent as dishwashing, high priestess of poetry, scientist, entrepreneur, journalist, sensual soulmate, physician of justice, spirit, Kuan Yin, Oshun, Amorasu, bringing light, compassion, creation, composer of life. A woman is all that, and she is a woman whose tears, like a river, runs into her heart, rushes to her throat. Stop violence, children killing children, hopelessness, hate crimes, rape, incest, homelessness, hunger, war, bigotry, glass ceilings, all inequity. Women know about things gone wrong. We know about recovery. See how we stretch over pain for beauty? Listen to the power of our voices, the building of this music, our push to make things new, push for life. Women know about that. For me, the question is not having it all, is it all possible, but rather the struggle for me is being all that we can be. I say it is possible for us to be all that and a bag of chips, as the kids would say. We are indeed more wise, more strong, more powerful because of the pain and the shame and the put-downs that we as women overcome. All those small words used to diminish us, like bitch, object, thing, or gook, jap, chink, or coffee fetcher, token female, the little woman, or disadvantaged, pregnant teen, or dropout. We set those afire, burn them up in the foundries of our invention, and we define who we are in the success and the joy of our whole selves. We are forged with iron and silk, now to take our addictions, the abuse, and the sexist, racist slurs and transform them into our resistance, our strength, and our power. Thank you. And we as women, because we are also mothers and nurturers of future generations, take all that and work to break tradition. And I want to thank Susan McDougall for giving voice to the voiceless from the prisons of concrete and neglect. We break tradition. We break the cycles of poverty and brutality and dependency and femicide and fanticide and suicide. We protect our daughters and sons from violence and incest. Remove the fingers of silence from their tongues. I want to break tradition and be all that. Yes, even all that which shamed me in the past, chained me to the yoke of unacceptable or invisible because of the color of my skin or the ghetto I live in or the flat of my chest or the size of my dress. Let us use the wisdom. Thank you. Let us use the wisdom of our wounds, the gift of spirit in our lives, and we will become stronger because we know what it means to be all that. I found that healing begins when we tell the truth of our stories, break the silences, reach out to community, when we reveal all of ourselves and trust that we as women are more alike, as Dr. Angelou says, than unalike. 35 years ago, when I started to work at Glide Church, I was an accident. I did not come into this career path on purpose, nor did I know what I stepped into, how it would help shape me, and who would be the messengers calling me to change. I met a very strange minister, Cecil Williams, who took down the cross from the sanctuary wall as one of his first moves when he was appointed, and proclaimed that we are the cross, that we should walk among the suffering of the people. Well, I thought we'd be struck down by lightning and sent to hell. But that cross, symbolically placed in the streets, pulled me out of my self-pity and my self-rejection. Cecil had this radical concept that his unconditional love and acceptance of all people could change the world. Well, I found I wanted to work for that movement, but I had to begin with myself, with my own healing. I did not imagine when we began to feed the hungry 30 years ago at Glide with a small band of volunteers bringing potluck for 50 people once a week, that we would grow to serving now 1.5 million meals a year, 3 times daily. 365 days a year. And I did not know that the hungry person standing in line, angry and mean, would be my messenger, calling me to life. When we began our recovery programs at Glide to fight the genocidal effects of crack cocaine and violence, I did not anticipate that I would join the circles of women who told stories of their addictions and of the incest and the abuse and the battering and the racism that disempowered them. I did not know they would begin my recovery, calling me out of layers of denial. I spent so many years underground and undercover, trying to be perfect, trying to please everybody. I was a stranger to myself. Shame about my history of childhood abuse caused me to cover myself up. And growing up with predominantly white images, I internalized my absence of diversity. This invisible theme that Helen spoke of. My family and I were incarcerated in a World War II concentration camp because of our ancestry. And we were, as Pat Means says, broke. I thought, as an Asian woman, my skin was too dark, my hair too straight, I was too skinny, not enough breast or butt. I bought into the programming that exploited my insecurities, and I contributed heftily to the billions of dollars we as women spend on powder, rouge, bleaching creams, hair crimpers, curlers, straighteners, perms, corsets, padding, and diet food. Looking for my prince, I kissed a lot of frogs. Abusive, possessive, oppressive men who I thought showed love by battering me. I felt I deserved no better. But after coming upon Glide and Cecil and being in the circles of recovery with women who were so courageous, who are our true revolutionaries with their truth, it was like light. I found that there is no place to hide. I had to face my need for healing and release that victim and become more than all that. In those circles, we remembered the resilience of women who came before us, who had to create feasts from bare pantries, who were beautiful before the creams, inside and out. We reclaimed our color, our history, our anger, pushed ourselves to rebirth. We changed the definition of ourselves from bad women who were silenced with shame and self-hate to women who, in recovery, were so good, we be bad. Bad women know how to cook, create a miracle in a pot. Make something out of chicken feet, pig's feet, cornmeal, hog maw, fish heads, fat back, ribs, roots, soy, or red beans. Bad women overcome homelessness, violence, addiction, and self-hate. Bad women march for equality, education, jobs, justice, childcare, healthcare, affirmative action, and choice. Beautiful bad women flaunt themselves. Plump as mangoes, skinny as tallow, tall as short, dark as plums and coffee, light as cream and butter, gold as sun on lemons, red as cinnamon, brown as cola. Bad women don't get old, they get full flavored. Full flavored like aged wine, full as vessels overflowing with tears and laughter, brimming with wisdom, full as seasons turning, menopausal and mighty. Yeah! Bad women celebrate themselves. Finger popping, hip shaking, big laugh, wise mouthed, hefty thighed, loud talking women. hat-wearing, soft-syllabled, eyelash-fluttering, tangerine lipstick queens. Small and big-breasted women, fat-kneed, thin-ankled women who dance without warning, wrap their men or their women around their waist and boogie down till dawn. Bad women know how to stir their tears in pots of compassion. Add some hot sauce, wasabi, 5 spices, jalapenos, the salt of memory, stoke the fire of history, simmer in resilience, make it taste like home. Bad women can burn. Thank you. Over the past 35 years, thousands of children, youth, families, single men and women have come through Glide's doors for our services and programs. Over 75% of our children have been or are homeless and face and survive the most adverse circumstances. What we have learned is what you know, that the issues of poverty, addiction, violence, physical illness, and mental disability are far too complex to band-aid and treat one-dimensionally. We must provide a continuum of care holistically. At Glide, we have had to create programs designed to meet the total needs of the individual, the family, the whole child, and find authentic ways to restore self-esteem, to invent new approaches to achieve healing and empowerment. And of course, we start with our children, our young people. But among our 50 programs, like our employment and training programs, for example, we understand that we must provide literacy courses, self-esteem counseling, along with technology training for living wage jobs that will enable people to reside in the Bay Area. Another example, our Glide Clinic provides urgent and primary care to everyone who walks through our doors. But we know we must deal with mental health problems and those multiple factors which have marginalized someone, including violence, racism, being a woman, ashamed of being poor. And our newest program, everyone said it could not be done. To house multi-diagnosed homeless people, families with children, people with AIDS, battered women, and recovering individuals under one roof. But with Cecil's faith, the mayor's help, and lots of hard work, we demonstrate that it can be done. In Cecil Williams's Thank you. Glide Community House, a 52-unit affordable housing complex. We hope it is a model for the nation. We know that for people to succeed in breaking their cycles of dependency, it will require the effort of a village, the love of an extended family, the spirituality of our compassion and acceptance. In this new century, I hope we will be unified as a powerful community of women who reach beyond our own barriers of fear, of class, and race, and condition. We uphold in our arms as women the spiritual, the compassionate, the irresistible force that affirms life. It was the compassion of my grandmother when I was a child that held me up, helped me decide that I must continue. Her love gave me the strength to overcome and more to try to make a difference in the world. But what I did not know when I came to Glide those many years ago as a temp, working my way through graduate school, with the leadership then being all white males, Cecil the only African-American minister, and a staff of 15, I could not imagine that I would become its president, and that I would be part of its phenomenal growth into a major nonprofit agency in San Francisco with a staff now of 225. Nor that I would, with a team of incredible people, reorganize its structure with predominantly women and people of color in decision-making roles. I did not think our investment portfolio would grow from $3 million to $17 million, or that we would expand from 1 to 3 buildings in 1 year. I have come to understand that all things are possible. In partnership with a brilliant visionary and a loving husband, Cecil Williams, a powerful community, a great mayor, a wise board of women and men to support us, all things are possible. And as Her Honor, Loretta Biggs said, we can't do this alone. There is a whole legion lifting us up and clearing the road. This journey to a place we have visioned continues. We celebrate each step of this journey, the wounds that give us greater wisdom, the grace that brings hope, the courage to stand against racism's hate and classism's neglect and sexism's diminishment. We celebrate our words that break the silence of shame, abuse, and rape, our truth that shouts to take back our trust, restore our voice, our right of choice, our pride in self, our inner wealth, to remove the thief who stole the jewel of our belief in our beauty and worth. We give birth to ourselves to restore our lives, not just survive, but thrive, be alive, alive, because we are all that. So the question for me is not, how can we have it all? But rather, what does it mean for us as women to be all that and a bag of chips, as the kids would say? When I look in the mirror today and ask, who are you? I'm able to face me and tell you I am in recovery, a battered woman of former relationships. I had been incested in childhood by a number of adult males in my family for 11 years. I am an ex-internee of World War II American prison camps. I am not a victim. I am not an accident. I choose to show up, to be present each day. I feel okay about my hair and my legs, though I gotta work still on my butt. I am breaking tradition and cycles of abuse for my daughter. I celebrate each day that I am able to breathe clean air, and thank God that I am all that. My bag of chips, I know the face and the color of racism, and I define who I am. I hold fast the fist of the abuser and make it my best weapon. I let go of guilt and worthlessness, and in their place, I create solid ground. I see a field of bees and make a pathway there. The women who bear light, mother, grandmother, all those who have come before to bring us life are remembered. They are a hive of love. And I can say to you, I am a witness that love does transform. Come on now, Empress of Laundry, Physician of Justice, wondrous women, juggler of shopping carts, cooking, career, children, every woman, bad women. Yes, we are all that. Thank you.
From Jackie Besser, who started, Susan Moss, Carolito, let me ask you, because Carol had the most difficult task. She had two incredible raising of the bars by two previous chairpersons, and it was really a challenge to find talent from throughout this country, convince them to come, put together their words, and share. And it is apparently an incredible challenge for people to be honest and talk about themselves. Now, I can lie all day about me. I mean, there ain't no problem. I'm so good at lying about me that I don't even know what the real truth is. I've been doing it so long. But it is absolutely for Carolito to have put together this program the way in which it was put together this year, to have gone through all the trials and tribulations, to get more sponsors than we've ever had before, to raise more money than we've ever raised before, to reach out to more people who couldn't afford it than we've ever done before, to make it more diverse than it's ever been. She's really raised the bar. She stood on the shoulders of Jackie and Susan. Carolito.